it's going to end up potentially being like an upside down triangle. If we grow the top too much and don't grow the foundations and structures below it, it might all come tumbling down. So I know players who play in Tier 3, which is effectively League 1, and they are earning no money a week. There is no support with their expenses. At that level, you're expected to be fit and healthy and perform at the highest level you can be. So that includes gym membership, football boots, equipment, travelling, all of that, and there's no support or cover for that. So not only are you trying to be a full-time footballer with no money, you need to support yourself with another job and fund everything and still do all the training.
Hello and welcome to the Goal Assist podcast. My name is Joshua Price, and at this point I would normally say the objective of this podcast is to bring you closer to executives across the football industry. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm bringing you a baller. I'm bringing you a professional football player who would like to share their story and talk about how they're building their personal brand to help other professionals do similar things. So Beatrice Rogers, thank you for joining us. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to start this chat.
No problem at all. So before we go into the business stuff, let's talk about football first. So what was your background? Was it always just football? Was it multi-sport? What was the start of your journey? What did that look like?
Yeah, so for me, definitely multi-sport. I've played every single sport that was available to me growing up. I come from quite a sporty family. Both my parents actually met doing athletics. So yeah, sport was always on the TV, always being played in the garden, that kind of thing. So yeah, I did pretty much everything on offer growing up, but football is where my passion lied from quite a young age. I started kicking a ball around in the school playground when I was about 6 years old, and it kind of grew from there. I joined the school team when I was 9, and then finally persuaded my parents to let me join a team outside of school when I was 11. So did a bit of everything, but football from a young age was the thing I was most interested in.
Was the opportunities for you outside of school women's sport? Because I know when I was younger, it was like a boys and girls team almost. Then obviously as it got older, there was individual women's teams. Was it something where you were competing in a mixed team early on, or were you straight into women's sporting environment?
Yeah, so when I played for the school team, I was actually the first girl ever to be picked for the school team. So I was the only girl in the boys' team. But that didn't last very long. Sadly, the opposition parents complained about there being a girl in the team and I got kicked off, which is then when I turned to trying to persuade my parents to let me join a team outside of school. And that was a girls-only team. But I played girls-only football up until I was 14 when I joined a boys' team again. Again, being the only girl in the boys' team, just for a bit more experience, trying to get the physicality side that there is more in the boys' men's game. And then carried on doing that until I was 16, dropped that, rejoined the school team, this time like secondary school boys team, under 18s. Again, I was the first girl to be picked for that team, and that was an experience. I think all of the times I played boys football, it was harder than I anticipated. Good to get the physicality experience, that kind of thing, but yeah, I probably experienced a lot more sexism and misogyny than I expected.
I mean, that must be tough for any player, but to be surrounded in a men's game and have to deal with that, how did that affect you? How did you manage to overcome that? Or if anybody else is in that situation right now, if there's a young woman watching this, competing in a men's game right now, what advice would you give them to help them cope with, the additional pressures of being a woman in the men's game?
I think that's a really good question. I think, first of all, playing boys and men's football isn't for everyone. I don't think it's the right decision for all girls to be stepping into the men's game. I'm not sure it was the right decision for me. I think mentally I really struggled with it, especially the under 18 team that I was playing in a few years ago. I found that really tough. That was probably the least fun I've ever had playing football. But at the same time, the flip side, I did gain a lot for my game, and it's made my transition from girls football to women's football so much easier. But my advice is probably try and find a support network. I don't know whether that's family, friends, coaches. It's really important that you have that support around you and people you can go to lean on, that type of thing when you're in that environment, because it can be really tough. I think the biggest thing is the importance of having a supportive coach. When I played boys football outside of school, under 14 stuff, we actually had a women's coach. And I think that made a big difference. That made it a lot easier for me. But yeah, I think the coach is the person that makes the biggest difference for that kind of environment.
So going from there to now, where are you currently in your journey, and what's the aim? What's the target? How far do you want your sort of football career to go?
Yeah, so I'm currently playing Tier 4 women's football for AFC Sudbury, but the aim, I want to go as far as I can. I'm 19, so I've still got a bit of time on my side. But yeah, the aim is to go as far as possible. I don't know what's realistic, but I'd love to play in the top tier of women's football in this country.
No, it's great. To be honest, when you if your goals aren't unrealistic, they're not big enough. That's how I always say. Because you there's no advantage to undershooting your
Mm.
like. There's no advantage to setting a low goal and achieving it. You could have set a higher goal and you might not push yourself hard enough. If you set yourself a really high target and you just come short, you've still gone as far as you know you can because you're chasing something even bigger. So I absolutely should be aiming for the top of the women's game. It's absolutely should be doing that. One of the things that a lot of people struggle with, young athletes, is financial burden of, balancing maybe study, then they've got part-time work, then they've got, other things going on. But they know in order to be successful, they've got to commit as much time as possible to the sport. One of the things that you've managed to do is start to build a personal brand. What made you aware of that? What sort of encouraged you to do that? And how has that allowed you to attract brands like Under Armour to come and sponsor you, and talk around sort of how that all came about?
Yeah, I think for me, the realization came that even if I do make it to the top of women's football, it's a short career and there's not a lot of money in the women's game anyway. So it's not like I'm going to be making millions in my career and then I can retire and not have to do anything afterwards. So I came to that realization. And as much as I want to do football, I know that I need something else as well. And I want that thing to still be football related. I slowly started to realize that social media was an option. There's a lot of it going on in the women's game at the moment. Loads of WSL players are creating their own personal brands and posting a lot on social media. So I kind of started doing the same and I love it. I love the creative side of it, making the content, all of that, trying to inspire more girls to get involved in the game. Hopefully the role model that I didn't have growing up is a lot of fun. But yeah, that kind of all began to snowball a bit when I signed with Under Armour. It began to grow a lot more than I thought it would, which is cool. They helped a lot as well. They're really big on social media. I had a lot of support from them, which was massive. Yeah, I'm enjoying it at the moment. So the Under Armour is probably a bit different to what you expected. They run a program called UA Next London, and their athletes anytime can go down and test in their testing centre in London. And they try and pick 3 athletes every 3 or 4 months to sponsor. So you're basically competing against thousands of other people for a sponsorship deal. So I went down, did my test, didn't expect anything from it, didn't do amazing, not terribly. I then got a message from them saying that I had made it to the next round, which they fly you out to Amsterdam to do some more testing there. I genuinely thought that was a spam message at the time. I did not believe it. I had to phone up the store and just double check because I was like, there's no way that I've made it to the next round. So that was a bit of a shock. And then, yeah, went out to Amsterdam, worked really hard and thankfully managed to secure the sponsorship. The phone call that I got from them when I found out that I secured it was crazy. I got the phone call while I was at school, which was kind of mad. All of my friends and stuff celebrated with me afterwards, which was very cool. But yeah, the Under Armour was a bit different to how most people secure most sponsorships because that was kind of competing for one. But yeah, definitely a big turning point in my journey for me.
I mean, and it's great to see brands looking at different ways to sort of attract and scout talent, if you like. I mean, that's a very natural path for an athlete to go for a trial, go compete, try and win a contract. It's more familiar for athletes to almost compete in that world. So the fact that they've now realized they can do a similar thing from a brand perspective is a really clever play from Under Armour. And I feel like that's something that other brands can learn from, but also anyone listening to this who would like to sort of get Under Armour as a prospective sponsor, at least they know that might be an avenue they weren't aware of before. So it's brilliant to hear that story. From the sort of relationship with Under Armour then, what does that look like now? Is it check-ins? How is it a set length contract? How does that work?
Yeah, so I signed a 1-year contract with them in February 2024. I'm no longer like an in-season athlete is what they call it, but I'm still connected with the brand. So I still attend events, still get kit, that kind of stuff. It's just not as intense as the in-season. When you're an in-season athlete, you get all the kit, you get training sessions, meeting with like top psychologists, nutritionists, sleep experts. Like, the amount of support you get when you're an in-season athlete is insane. But then what I've received as an out-of-season athlete has also been pretty good. Like, the connections I've still got with Under Armour, I know if I've got a problem, I'm struggling with my football, struggling with a specific aspects, I can drop a message to my contact and they'll help me out. So yeah, the support that Under Armour have given me, both football-wise, confidence-wise, and with my social media, has all been, like I said, game-changing for me.
From the social media side then, what are the tactical things that they might have helped you with, or what sort of advice are you getting on that side of things? How do they go about supporting you growing your personal brand?
Yeah, so when I signed with them back in February 2024, one of the first things we had is I sat down with the media team and just discussed what I want from my social media, what I'm aiming for, what my goals are. They helped me gain a clearer picture of what I wanted to do with my personal brand and with my social media, which at that time I was very new to social media. I hadn't really done much in that space yet, so I found that super beneficial. But it's also just, for me, the exposure and experiences you get. So when we've got events, we'll turn up and there'll be like 4 or 5 cameras capturing what we're doing. They'll do interviews with us. They'll post us on their social media. I've had modeling experience with Under Armour for some of their brand campaigns. Like, the experiences I've had through the brand, I don't think I would have had, like, not many people my age get to experience that kind of stuff. So I feel like I'm now coming into the industry with more experience in front of a camera than I would have otherwise. But yeah, they support with the social media as well. We do lots of collabs with them on our accounts, on their accounts, which definitely has helped a lot.
You spoke briefly there on building a better picture of what you want your brand to look like. If you're going to advise other people to do this, it'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts on where your brand is heading, but also what things did they prompt you to consider when building that brand?
Yeah. We spoke a lot about different things that I hadn't considered. So obviously with Under Armour kind of being a fashion brand, sports clothing, we spoke a lot about that and like what style I'm going for, clothes wise, that kind of thing. But just what I want the meaning behind my content. I feel like I know a lot of content creators who post content kind of feels like for the sake of it. Like, I guess they're trying to build their brand, they're trying to gain a bigger audience, but with no deeper meaning behind it. Whereas for me, every piece of content I produce, I'm trying to increase the representation of the women's game. That's kind of the purpose of all of my content. Increase the representation and hopefully off the back of that, inspire more girls to get involved in the game. Because for me, growing up, there was no representation of the women's game for me. When I was in the school playground kicking the ball around, there was no social media, women's football wasn't on TV or in mainstream media, so I genuinely thought I was the only girl in the world that played football. At the age of 9, I thought that if I wanted to be a professional footballer, I'd have to be the first girl to play in the Premier League. And I feel like that was something I struggled with a lot growing up. And obviously it's changed a lot now. Women's football is in the mainstream media, it's on social media as well. But I feel like for me, I'm trying to use my content to grow that platform and grow the game even more. So yeah, we spoke a lot about like my individual goals and aims with my social media.
Brilliant. What your content that you put out now, it's all football related to give people more sort of aspiration. It gives someone to look up to. It shows that they're not alone in this process because obviously it's a massively growing area of the sport. Women's football is booming, but it's still sort of considered a niche. Like if you were to go to a school tomorrow, most of the people kicking a football will still be male in the playground. So to represent that niche is really strong. What are your aspirations from the media side? Is that where you see your career? I know I'm sort of retiring you now very early, but is that the idea? Is it the media side of the sport that you'd like to continue to be involved with throughout your career and obviously post?
Yeah, I think obviously it's hard to predict where I'm heading right now, but I'm just kind of following what I enjoy. I'm enjoying the social media. I really enjoy the in front of the microphone kind of stuff. So I've done interviews with fans ahead of WSL games and that kind of thing. And I really enjoy that. So I feel like sports presenting is kind of the route I might be heading down post football career, but it's hard to predict at the moment.
No, completely understandable. It's good to have a direction, but it's also good to experience as much as you can so that you can understand what you're best suited to and what you most enjoy, like you just said. And the one advice I'd give to people who are sort of on this journey is like double down on what you're good at. Like you're naturally going to be better at some things than others. Some people are awful at public speaking, frightened to be on stage, don't want to talk in front of people. It's just not for them. And for those people, even if it's something that you think you're enjoying, it might not be like leaning on your strengths. You might be other areas that you're actually naturally just very good at. You might be a strategic thinker. You might be very good at like, I don't know, the business side and whatever. Like lean on what you're good at because you're far more likely to make a success of something you're naturally already very good at. So I'm going to go down into the financial support element now. Becoming an athlete, you've done very well for gaining the Under Armour contract means that you've been able to get access to sort of equipment and things like that. Have you gone through the journey of working part-time to be able to sort of replace that with social media work and branding deals, or are you still on that journey now? How do you sort of see that path from being able to do football as full-time, whether it's obviously playing, but also sort of the off-pitch media stuff?
Yeah, so if I'm being completely honest, I'm at a point I'm not really making any significant money from social media, and I'm not really making any significant money from football. So I work a couple of casual part-time jobs on top. I do a lot of coaching, I referee, and I work in a pub. So I feel like I've got multiple full-time careers. I feel like the social media takes up most of my time and the football takes up most of my time. But sadly, I'm still at a point where they don't really pay. That's the aim. I want to get to a point because that's what I enjoy. I want to do that full time and get paid for it full time. But yeah, like I said, there's not that much money in the women's game, and I feel like it's hard to get to a point to make decent amount of money off social media. So we're still finding our way, figuring it out. I'm still young, so I feel like I've got that on my side, and I'm not desperate to be earning a crazy amount of money just yet. But we'll see how long it's sustainable for before I need to start earning like a decent amount.
From the coaching and refereeing side you just mentioned, does that help you see the sport from a different angle and actually have benefits for you when you step onto the pitch?
Yeah, 1,000%. I've said this a lot, but I think refereeing has benefited my game so much. I started refereeing when I was 14 years old, and I kind of started it because I wanted to get a better understanding of the rules, because I feel like there's so many players who play the game and actually don't understand the rules at all. So that helped a lot with the rules, and I feel like I can now have a conversation with the referee on a match day and question their decision, but with actual like knowledge behind that questioning. So I do feel like that's helped, and again, coaching also similar. You get to see a different perspective and understand the game on a slightly deeper level, and I also enjoy both of them quite a lot, so it's good fun.
No, it's brilliant. The understanding the rule element is really important. I think that I sort of can relate to that from the business side of the game in terms of like a lot of people are playing the game of the business end of sport, but don't necessarily understand all the rules and regulations that come along with it, and you know how their decisions impact regulations and so on. But it's the same with on the pitch. Like the better you understand the rules, the better you can play the game because you know you understand what you can and can't do. And with the coaching side, is that just coaching? Is it also planning sessions? Is it management on a Sunday? Do you have a weekly team? What does your coaching responsibilities currently look like?
Yeah, so I've just started coaching regularly an under 11 girls team, but I don't help out on the weekend, so I don't get to see their matches. But I coach them during the week. So, yes, planning sessions, managing the group. I feel like that's quite a big thing. Trying to manage a group of under 11 girls can be a bit of a nightmare at times. But yeah, it's quite nice to see that side of the game and get a better understanding of what my coaches and my management team are going through. So yeah, I feel like that's helped as well.
And as well, I can imagine that being able to see it from a coaching perspective, it also helps you. Because when you're in order to help improve the players, what you're trying obviously under 11s are slightly young, but you're trying to identify maybe what weaknesses there are, and you're trying to support them with areas that you know they need more support with. And I think having that critical thinking of sort of reviewing performance also helps you sort of review your own performance and understand sort of like your weaknesses, and also then have the tactical sessions that maybe you could plan for yourself in
Mm.
order to then improve yourself. From a sporting side of things, what does your training look like? What does your normal week look like from a training point of view?
Okay, so I'll start from a Sunday, that's a match day. So that's kind of the focal point of the week. That's when we play our games. And then the day after that, Monday, I will do active recovery. So that will be ice bath, walk, that type of thing. But I'll also do an upper body session, try and get the blood flowing again, a bit of recovery through that. Tuesday and Thursday are team training days, but I will also try and do a bit of a session in the morning before that, whether that's in the gym or out on the pitch doing a bit of technical work. Wednesdays, I've got a one-on-one coaching session that I do. So again, more football training. Fridays, I do one-on-one S&C with a coach, which is more focused around like injury prevention, which is good. And then Saturdays, a day off. So yeah, a bit of a busy week, but it's good fun.
Yeah, and especially building that, the coaching, the pub, everything else around that, it shows that you are sort of non-stop with your, life. Really. I was going to just say
Yeah.
football, but generally sound absolutely non-stop. How did you come about sort of building that routine? Did that sort of become a natural thing, or is that something where you've been advised to like, this is how you should be structuring your week to get the most out of your performance? Or is it just something that sort of you've naturally built along the way?
Yeah, it's definitely evolved over the years. I think a couple of years ago when I was in school, it was different because the time I had for it was different. But for me, I don't think it's something that people have told me this is what you should be doing. For me, everyone's different. Every athlete's body recovers different, performs different. So I think it's something you have to figure out yourself. Obviously, people have advised me along the way, maybe try this, maybe try that. But for me, it's definitely something I've figured out and it works for me. So I'm very aware that lots of athletes are trying to follow what Messi did growing up, that type of thing, but without maybe realizing that they're not Messi, they're different. So yeah, something I figured out along the way with a bit of advice here and there.
Bro, when you go to look for advice, where do you turn? Obviously, you have your coaches and stuff, but what you're trying to do with your social media now is provide a community for women and for them to get into the sport and to become football players. Is there a support network of football players that you turn to for advice that maybe are further along in the journey? Is there anyone that you've got access to help you in that sense?
Yeah, I think I've built up kind of a support network in the football space over the years. Coaches that I've had along the way, my S&C coach and one-on-one coach are definitely two big contacts for me that I'll speak to. But also current teammates, ex-teammates that I get on with. It's good to have that support because although I do come from a sporty family, I'm the only one in my family that plays football. No one else has ever really kicked a ball around. It's quite nice to have someone in the game that I can turn to and get support from on that point of view.
Now, I also think it can be beneficial because some issues that athletes have from a young age is their parents being very much involved and the pressure that comes from that. The fact that you sort of don't have that is obviously pluses and minuses. Obviously, having the support of your parents who can actually guide you more specifically can be useful if done in the right way. But the fact that you're sort of going down a sport where maybe your parents have less expertise in, it means that you've had to forge your own path, find your own mentors, and find what fits for you, which I actually think is rather than being sort of shoehorned into a pathway, and which a lot of athletes are, like you've been able to sort of find your own way, which is I think will massively benefit you moving forward. In terms of sort of tactical advice, is there anything that you've been told that sort of like unlocked another level? Yeah.
Wow, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing is probably the mental side of the game. There have definitely been pieces of advice I've been given about mindset that probably if you can shift your mindset and have the right mental state going into a game, that's probably the quickest you can improve. So I feel like that's such a huge part of the game. So for me, from quite a young age, I journal a lot around football. I have like a notebook that I'll write in before a game to just clear my head, get my thoughts out of my brain onto some paper. But I've got one for training, one for match days that I will reflect afterwards. So just try and get my thoughts again out of my head onto paper about how I found the training session, how I found the match. And it's quite nice to look back over time and you can see the recurring themes of this is going well or this maybe isn't. And then you know where you need to change things. But yeah, the mental side's probably where you see the biggest improvement in a short space of time. But there are definitely other things like smaller details in terms of like body shape on the pitch, communication, that type of thing. But probably you don't see as much of an improvement in a short space of time as you probably do with the mental side.
Definitely. I think going in with the right mental attitude means that it completely changes a game. You see football clubs at the moment where you see the players go out on the pitch and you know they've lost the game before they've hit the ball because you can just tell by the demeanor. Other than journaling, have you got any sort of pre-match routine, pre-match ritual which helps you get into that mindset?
I'm going to be honest, it's something I'm still figuring out. I'm still testing things every week, trying something different. So recently I've tried, it's called like the alien. I don't know. It's basically you go into the game and you try and picture that you're an alien. You've just arrived. There's no past, no future. no backstory, nothing like that. You're just here for the game, and it tries to block out everything else. So then when you're on the pitch, if you make a mistake, you're not thinking that's going to affect the rest of the game, the next week, whatever, and you're not thinking about a mistake you made in the past. You're just in the game. So I've been trying that at the moment. It's still figuring it out, still adjusting. But in terms of routine, I am a routine person physically, so my match day routine, always the same. I hate it when it changes. If our kickoff time's different, I hate that so much. So yeah, I definitely like having the same routine on a match day, even the day before. I like to bring the routine in, but I'm still trying to learn because obviously the routine can't always be the same. Stuff happens that's out of your control. So we're trying to figure it out still, and it's definitely something that I'm still evolving, still figuring out.
No, but it's great to hear. I mean, the alien thing is great. I think it, but because also I think the thing is with sort of psychological things, sometimes naming it in a way in which is very unique allows you to like really commit to it. How did that come about? Is that something that you've read about? Is that something that somebody else has been doing and is seen to be effective?
Yeah, so I find sports psychology really interesting, and I do read a lot about it. And I can't remember the name of the book. It's called The Athlete Mindset or something like that. It speaks a lot about these kind of little tricks you can use, that type of thing. So yeah, it's something that I've read up about, and I find it quite interesting, that type of thing. And like I said, I'm still figuring out what works exactly for me, and I'll try different things on different weeks and see the effects of it.
That isn't something that was sort of like widespread when I was going through you. They're like people didn't really. I mean, mental health has only really been a thing in the last sort of 10 years. Like people didn't really talk about that sort of stuff. So it not just mental health side of things, but obviously sort of like psychological tactics, if you like. Is that something that's more widespread now? Is that something that your other players that you play with are doing similar things, or is it something that because of the fact that you're taking this seriously, because of the fact that you want to get to the absolute elite level of the game, is this extra stuff that you're doing, or do you see other athletes doing similar things around you?
I feel like it probably is more widespread now than it used to be, but it's not something that we really discuss in the change room. So I have no idea if my teammates are doing anything similar. It's something I guess, kind of taken the initiative. Like I said, I find psychology quite interesting anyway. So I quite enjoy reading up about this kind of thing. But yeah, I couldn't tell you if any of my teammates are doing anything similar.
Now, I think the reason why I ask is I think it's actually something that's really valuable. Is there anything that you see and been able to pass down from a mental side of game to the people that you've coached?
So probably not so much coaching. Like you said, I coach quite young age groups, so it's not really always applicable. But on social media, I speak a lot about mindset and confidence and the impact of low confidence, that type of thing. And I do get a lot of messages from young girls reaching out saying that they're struggling with that, asking for advice. And I always try my best to respond where I can. But yeah, it's something I feel like I have tried to help people with when they reach out with that kind of issues, because it is something that I've struggled with throughout my career, and the impact of your confidence being knocked for whatever reason I think is massive on the way you play. So I've not really done much through coaching, but through social media I feel like I have been able to help people, or I hope it's helped. Tried where I can.
No, it's great. And as well, you got to remember you're so early in your journey in all of this. So the fact that you're already aware of this, you're trying to build this, you're trying to, that's the direction that you're trying to get to. I think to have already started this journey so young only means that, as you move forward throughout your career, you will be able to provide more guidance to younger players that are around you. And I think that's a real big part of leadership as a player. It's not just about how good you are as a player, it's about how good you make the others around you. And there's lots of players where you see like it feels like they don't contribute. If they're on the pitch, you almost don't see how much they contribute, but when they're not in the team, you realize the influence that they had on the pitch. And I feel like obviously you can do that tactically in terms of the way in which you're communicating, positioning players, the information that you give, but also from a mental side of thing and a leadership point of view, if you're, bringing an attitude to the game, it is going to rub off on others. And the harder you are able to work on the pitch because of the mindset that you have, the more that's going to rub off on the players around you. Have you seen a change? Do you feel like your ability to lead on the pitch has improved as you've sort of gone down this pathway? Is it something that you're actively trying to do?
I think it's interesting. I'd say I've always tried to be a leader on the pitch, but it was different when I was playing youth football and we were all the same age to now being a younger player stepping into a women's team. I feel like age definitely impacts your ability to lead when you're in that environment. I'm one of the younger players on the team, so I think it's maybe a bit harder to step up and try and be the leader when you're less experienced in that kind of environment to everyone else. But yeah, I always try my best to help people where I can and lift up my teammates, because ultimately it's a team game, and if we can all be at our best, then we're going to perform better as a team.
No, absolutely. Has there been a time where you've had sort of like a clarifying moment in terms of how you act on a pitch or what you bring, or is there like been a moment?
I think there've probably been lots of little moments throughout my career where I've had mini realizations of I'm capable of playing at this level. Like, I think throughout my journey, there've been lots of times where my confidence has been knocked by things, by performances, that type of thing. And then the flip side of that is there have been lots of moments where my confidence has improved because I've seen a difference. The captain thing that you were talking about, I think, is really, really interesting, though. I'm very aware that the captain doesn't just have to be the one wearing the captain's armband. I think that's just a title, a position in the pitch. But for me, stepping into a women's team, I don't know, this is how I feel. I think you've got to be careful not to tread on people's toes. I think there will be senior players in the team that feel like they're the captain, feel like they're the leader, and maybe turning up and being shouting player, trying to be the like outward traditional leader, trying to give people directions isn't going to go down well. But I think there's other ways you can go about that leadership. And like I said, kind of trying to lift players up in other ways rather than just like shouting and being loud and being like the obvious leader, if that makes sense. So I feel like there are different ways to go about it. And I find like the psychological side of it, each player needs something different. Each player responds well. Like someone might respond well to a bit of criticism, you like constructive criticism of their performance. Someone might respond better to an arm around the shoulder, support, that type of thing. I find that really interesting. And I enjoy trying to figure out what different people respond well to and trying to boost the team in that way. I think it's quite interesting though.
Those skills are really valuable in terms of being a player and as a manager. Is that something that's sort of come naturally to you, or is that something where through your studies you've managed to get better? Because
I think for me, it's something I've always had a natural interest in. And I think that's the same with football. I think I've always, like, for whatever reason, it's something I've been interested in, the football and the leadership type of thing. I don't think I'm even that natural of a footballer. I think I've just put loads and loads of hours into it. And the same probably goes with the like psychology and the leadership side of it. It's something that I'm naturally interested in for whatever reason. And then I've learned a lot and developed and put the time into it. I feel like there's very few people who are naturally gifted at something. I feel like that's the rare thing, but it's always spoken about in the media and social media. Like, if you're not naturally good at it, give up. Like, what's the point? But for me, football as well, I don't think I'm a natural footballer. I think I've just put so many hours in because I love it and it's helped me get to where I am now and hopefully going to help me get further. But yeah, I think the nature versus nurture thing is interesting, but I feel like there's less natural talent than there is people who work hard.
yeah, I think it's a really interesting point you make there, and I think it also is encouraging for other young women and men who are trying to, or anyone that's trying to make it as an athlete. If you stick at it for long enough and you put the hours in, your skills will develop. You will get better. From the women's game, obviously we've spoken about there's not enough financial resources in the women's game currently. Where do you see the women's game going? Do you feel like there's going to be more opportunities for people who are sort of following in your footsteps?
Yeah, I think the opportunities are coming. I think the money side of the game is coming as well. It's definitely growing. You can see that. I think the caveat to that is it's not growing as quickly as people think. And the bits that are growing are probably the very top and maybe the grassroots game. I feel like where I am, there's a massive black hole in women's football. So, for example, I know our team struggled to get a front of shirt sponsor, and this is after the women's won the Euros. So I know that people are talking about how amazing the women's game is and how much it's growing. I feel like that's like a yes, but it's not as good as everyone thinks it is at the moment. But yeah, I'm hoping that it carries on growing, hopefully quicker than it is at the moment. But it'll be interesting to see whether it grows enough in my career or whether that's something that's going to come for future generations. But I do think there are going to be more opportunities and more money and that kind of thing for the girls growing up now, and hopefully when they get to my age that the game's a lot more developed and more set up for them than it is at the moment.
The one thing that I wanted to also sort of talk about there is Do you feel like the Women's Super League and what's happening is actually the best thing for the sport then? Do you feel like there needs to be more resource come down the pyramid?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think, like I said earlier, the representation of the women's game is massive. If a young girl can't see it, they're going to struggle to believe it. So the WSL growing and being bigger and being shown more on TV, more fans turning up to the stadiums, I think that's massive in growing the women's game. I think if we didn't have that, the women's game probably wouldn't be growing as much. But like you said, it's going to end up potentially being like an upside down triangle if we grow the top too much and don't grow the foundations and structures below it. It might all come tumbling down. So we'll see. I do feel like there's a lot of investment coming in at the very bottom, like young grassroots girls football academy setups. I do feel like money's being pumped in there, which is good. And those are the foundations we need. But like I said, it's kind of leaving a bit of a black hole in the middle of the game, which I think is fine if you're looking to grow the game long term. I think you do need the top and the bottom to be growing. But I do feel like some of us in the middle have been left behind a bit.
No, I do agree. I think one of the things that happens for a lot of athletes is they go through their sort of their youth journey very like successfully, and then they hit sort of like 17, 18, 19, 20, where maybe you come out of full-time education to now working. Your time and priorities shift, and also the opportunities sort of very much thinning. If you were in charge of the women's game for your local county FA, let's say, what sort of initiatives do you think they could bring in to sort of help those in the middle?
That is a very good question. I think financial support is important. I think in the women's game, you can play tier 3, tier 4, and I know players who play in tier 3, which is effectively League One, and they are earning no money a week. There is no support with their expenses. I think there's at that level, you're expected to be fit and healthy and perform at the highest level you can be. So that includes gym membership, football boots, equipment, traveling, all of that. And there's no support or cover for that. So not only are you trying to be a full-time footballer with no money, you need to support yourself with another job and fund everything and still do all the training. I feel like that's the thing that most women are probably struggling the most with. So financial support is probably the most important, but I'm aware and appreciate that that's easier said than done.
From that point of view, then, where do you see the responsibility? Because obviously, if there's all this money going into the top of the pyramid, like you feel like there's not just a moral obligation to support the lower game, but obviously there's a business sense of, the stronger pyramid, the more people we can get coming through. There's going to be less talent sort of fall away because of the fact that they can't sustain playing every week, absorbing all those costs, not getting any financial returns. Like there's an obligation there, but also do you feel like there's almost a business case, there's something missing from the women's sport currently that stops them being able to generate the revenue internally to help support their own players, like as a football club? Do you feel like that there's things that are being missed at a club level as well as sort of a macro wider level?
I think that's interesting. So I know not a lot of like men's non-league players, maybe like step 4, not like crazy high up, but a decent level, semi-pro, who will be earning £400 a week. Whereas I know a lot of tier 3 players who might have their expenses covered, they might be on nothing. And I feel like that's the big difference. We're kind of playing a similar-ish level of football, like we're both semi-pro, but the men are earning a lot and able to sustain themselves and the women aren't. So this is where some clubs in the women's game will start to do better because the men's side have decided to invest in the women's game. So at the moment you'll see even teams in tier 5, suddenly a tier 5 team will go from not doing very well, coming mid-table, to winning back-to-back to leagues because the men have invested and they've drawn players in and jumped up the pyramid quickly. So that's where it starts to change a lot. But the flip side of having a men's team decide to invest in you, in your side of the game, is I know lots of teams that suddenly collapse because the men's team have decided to withdraw that money. So then on the other hand, you can have standalone women's teams, and London City Lionesses are a brilliant example of that. They're doing really well. They're a standalone women's team. So there's no risk that a men's team are going to decide to withdraw all of that money. But I do know other standalone women's teams, and I've played for some in the past, where there is no financial support at all. There's no money. Names are peeling off our backs because they can't afford to replace that kind of thing. So I feel like it's such an interesting point and different things are working for different teams. But I don't know what the answer is going forward. We need that money and financial support coming from somewhere, and it's interesting to figure out why the men have all that money. I don't know how men's non-league teams are able to pay their players that much a week and why women's teams aren't. I don't know where they're getting that money from and we're not. I think it's an interesting conversation to have, but I don't know what the answer is.
Absolutely appreciate that. It's something that, the people at the top level of the game are trying to resolve. It's not something that me and you are going to resolve in the next 5 minutes. But I think it's really interesting that, the issues there are clear to see, and the fact that, just like the basic support, like obviously when I didn't have to get that high up in the men's game before my expenses were started to getting covered and all the rest of it, like things got easier earlier than in terms of from especially from a pyramid standpoint, Crest, like, I definitely wasn't playing League One and football. But even from my experiences, it's far easier to get that financial support in the men's game than it is the women's game. Before we wrap up, because I've just noticed the time, so is there anything that you would like to sort out there as sort of a closing remark for women? Is there any places where people can follow you? Is there anything that, to keep in touch? What should people do?
Yeah, I think if a woman's listening to this and thinking about getting involved, I think go for it. You don't have to be a young girl starting out to get involved. I think football, there's access to the sport, all ages, all abilities, all levels. Football's a game for everyone. It really is, not just for someone who's trying to make it professionally. If you enjoy the game, please get involved in whatever level you want. But then for me personally, so you can follow me at Beatrice Rogers _ on pretty much every platform on social media. Yeah, keep up to date with the kind of stuff I'm up to. I've actually just announced a very exciting project that I'm partnering with the FA called First Touch to try and get more girls involved in school playground football, where it all started for me. So yeah, I've got some very exciting things coming up and love people to join me on the journey for that.
Brilliant. For those who are interested in a network with myself and Beatrice, we have got the live community call in a couple of weeks' time. All the information will be in the below. Use the link, join the community, and I'd love to be able to network with you all and see you on the call. So thanks, Beatrice, for your time. It's been great speaking to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you.